Every preseason game has been played. Dear God, we're close to football starting. I know a lot of us have already had our drafts, but I think these rankings are going to help you out nonetheless. So let's dive deeper. Let's go top 36 wide receivers here after the preseason games. Now, before we get into it, of course, you know what I'm going to ask. Go down there, drop a like on this video. I don't even have to tell you to subscribe to the channel anymore. Y'all know we are getting a 24-hour live stream draft marathon going if we hit 90,000 subscribers, and it looks like everybody's going down there and subscribing, so that may end up having to happen. And because I appreciate all the support, I'm going to answer as many of these comments as I can. Now, I can guarantee that I'll at least answer the first 200 on this video. I'll try to maybe go to 300, 400. It's taking up my entire day at this point. So if you have any questions, leave them down there in the comment section. Now, let's dive right into this. Let's go. Courtland Sutton 1, Gabriel Davis 2. I could not be more excited about the upside for these receivers. I don't really even think we have to explain. Okay, obviously I had to get that joke in, but in all reality, tier 1, Justin Jefferson, Cooper Kupp, Jamar Chase. Is there anything I have to say? We've been talking about this all offseason. I mean, earlier in the offseason, we had Cooper Kupp 1, but then we had the Matthew Stafford elbow injury. If you still want to have Kupp 1, I'm going to be completely fine with it. You do you. But personally, I think that that's just enough to be used as a tiebreaker in favor of Justin Jefferson, who already checks every single box you'd look for and already has the elite level ceiling. Obviously, with Jamar Chase, he didn't have the target share or the air yards per game close to either Cooper Kupp or Justin Jefferson last year. But I do expect natural progression for the receiver going into his age 22 season. And as we've discussed in every single video this offseason, I think with the improvement for the offensive line with the Cincinnati Bengals, Zach Taylor decides to push the pace of play in game neutral environments for Cincinnati, where I think they're going to be running more plays per game. I think they're going to look a little more like the Dallas Cowboys, the Kansas City Chiefs, the Arizona Cardinals, the Buffalo Bills, and really any top level offense with the amount of plays that they're going to be able to get off. And now our tier 2, we are going to have Stefon Diggs leading us off at 4. Now, y'all know I've been aggressively drafting Stefon Diggs. If y'all look at us on Underdog Fantasy and those live streams, I'm taking Stefon Diggs in the middle of round 1, but that's where you have to start 3 wide receivers. Obviously, wide receivers are going to be pushed up in that format. In your casual fantasy football leagues, I've seen Stefon Diggs sliding to the second round in ESPN format. You have to take advantage of that value. I mean, that's literally why I decided to move him down to the tier below, just because the ADP in those casual formats is so skewed that you don't even have to take Stefon Diggs mid-round 1 there. You're getting a wide receiver that has potentially wide receiver 1 overall upside in the second round. I mean, if we're looking at the overall targets that are going to be available in Buffalo, if we're looking at the pace of play, if we're looking at the efficiency with Josh Allen under center, there are a million reasons to be excited about Stefon Diggs at 4. We're going to have Devonta Adams, CeeDee Lamb at 5 and 6 in the same tier. I mean, with these 2 wide receivers, obviously Devonta Adams taking that step back, given the fact that you are looking at the downgrading quarterback as well as the increased target competition across the board, moving from Green Bay to Las Vegas. Maybe the passing volume's up in Las Vegas compared to what you had in Green Bay, where we know that the Green Bay Packers try to slow the pace of play down. They try to win games more with their defense. And then with 6, CeeDee Lamb, literally, if you're drafting on Underdog Fantasy, you've seen him going late round 1. Now, I don't know if you should do that in a casual fantasy football league. In a casual fantasy football league, that'd probably be a pretty bad idea. But the reason high-stakes drafters are so excited about him is because he's stepping into a situation where, hell, if he is the talent that was advertised coming out of OU, he could be the wide receiver 1 overall in fantasy. I mean, we know that the Dallas Cowboys last year were number 1 in overall points scored. That's because they're looking to throw the ball every single down. And on top of it, they really play it like a video game. They play it like Madden. They have one of the fastest offenses in the NFL, and according to pace of play, so they should get a ton of plays off per game. You have really no target competition at all in Dallas. So that's why you're looking at high-stakes drafters being willing to take CeeDee Lamb this high, even though the highest he's ever been is wide receiver 16 on a per game basis, but we should expect that elite level breakout. Now, going down to our next tier, we're going to have Deebo Samuel at 7, Mike Evans at 8. Recently moved Mike Evans down, obviously dealing with an injury through training camp. Tom Brady wasn't at training camp. We have offensive line turnover for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Julio Jones added to this offense. Chris Godwin looks like he's going to be available earlier than expected. Hasn't been a great month for Mike Evans in his overall fantasy football stock. I think this is now a wide receiver you can take at the 2-3 turn on Underdog, where you have to start 3 of those guys. And if you're playing in a casual fantasy football league, there I think you honestly let Mike Evans fall to the 3rd round. And Deebo Samuel on the opposite end of the spectrum is someone that I think does see some serious regression from where he stood a year ago because, as we've discussed so many times before, Deebo Samuel over the last 3 years has been a wide receiver with the lowest average depth of target in the entire NFL. Deebo Samuel's utilized right around the line of scrimmage, which is perfect if you have that pocket passing stationary quarterback option that when he feels pressure, he has to dump the ball off. Now, I am unsure if it's going to be a great fit with Trey Lance, where Lance is going to be able to extend plays with his leg. If the pocket collapses, instead of dumping it off 2 yards down the field to Deebo Samuel, maybe he's able to run and pick up the first down on his own right. I also think that with Trey Lance under center, there's no way in hell that Deebo Samuel's getting to 8 rushing touchdowns again. So it's a very nice contract. I do think that you have some red flags with the transition over to Trey Lance. Now let's go down to our next tier, Tyreek Hill here at 9. With Tyreek Hill, obviously a nice preseason showing in the last game, but at the same time, I mean, you have the downgrade in quarterback only with the arm strength. Obviously, the upgrade with overall accuracy, and Tyreek Hill does tell us he would rather have the accuracy with Tua Tagovailoa than the arm strength with Patrick Mahomes. But maybe I'm an idiot. Of course, I'm not an NFL player, but we're going out on a limb and saying that Tua Tagovailoa is not as good of a quarterback as Patrick Mahomes is. I know that's a bold take, but I think we see the overall regression with Tyreek Hill's offensive efficiency with Tua Tagovailoa under center, and I think Jalen Waddle is a very good receiver. And then with the other wide receivers in this tier, I think that these are going to be the perfect guys you can get in the late 3rd round in your casual fantasy football formats. Obviously, on Underdog, you have to take these guys at the 2-3 turn instead. We're going to have Keenan Allen at 10. We're going to have AJ Brown at 11. And we're going to have T. Higgins at 12. Now, don't want to talk too much about this with Keenan Allen, as we've said in so many videos before. If you're playing in a non-PPR format, you're going to have to dramatically slide him down. These are rankings for a PPR league. And with Keenan Allen, he should just be that target hog wide receiver in a very prolific offense. I mean, if we're looking at over the past really 8 seasons with Keenan Allen, this is someone that has like a 24% team target share in every single year. It's legitimately absurd, the consistency that you have. Love him in a PPR format. If you're playing in like a half PPR league where touchdowns are a little more important, maybe you slide him down. Like if you're drafting on Underdog Fantasy, for example, obviously the spike weeks may not be there for the best ball format. And on top of it, you may not see a ton of touchdown volume in a half PPR league. Maybe that matters a little more. And of course, if you want to draft on Underdog Fantasy, if you want to get in some real money fantasy football drafts with us every single night on the live stream or during that 24-hour stream, go sign up. You can find the link in the description. You can find it in the comment section. Since it's best ball, no time commitment at all during the season, so it's a perfect spot to just go add a couple extra drafts if you've already had yours, have some fun, and then still be able to pay attention to the draft you really care about during the season. And when you sign up for Underdog Fantasy, use promo code FLOCK, you're going to get our 2022 fantasy football rankings, our 2022 fantasy football draft guide, which should still really help you out if you've already had your draft. Literally with the $10 deposit, you're getting that 300-page draft guide full of information. Now let's move it down to our next tier where we're going to have DJ Moore leading us off, with DJ Moore talking about a wide receiver that's just going to have a ridiculous amount of targets here in Carolina. Very similar to, Keenan Allen. He's like a younger Keenan Allen. I would say at this point of his respective NFL career, probably a little more talented, but I mean, he's not playing with Justin Herbert. He has to go up with Baker Mayfield, but Baker Mayfield should be the best quarterback he's ever seen in his entire NFL career. Trust me, I'm a Longhorn fan. Hook 'em horns. OU sucks. I don't like Baker Mayfield, but if I'm going to be objective about this, DJ Moore has dealt with the worst quarterback play in the NFL, arguably over the past 5 seasons. He's had to deal with 6.05 as an average adjusted yards per pass attempt for the quarterbacks during his time at Carolina. Baker Mayfield, historically speaking, is a little over 7, so it should be a serious upgrade with quarterback play. At 14, we are going to have Jalen Waddle. I understand every smart person in the comment section right now is going, Mason, you clown. Tua Tagovailoa is not going to be able to support 2 top-end wide receivers like this. Great point. I don't have a rebuttal outside the fact that Jalen Waddle just had a rookie season that compares to guys like Julio Jones, AJ Green historically. Jalen Waddle finished higher than this his rookie season. It's a horrible situation. I don't know how he overcomes it, but at the end of the day, from a raw talent perspective, if Jalen Waddle was in a different spot this year, I think that he would be easily a top 10 wide receiver, possibly in that same tier of guys that you're looking at with like a Deebo Samuel and a Mike Evans if he was in a better situation. Now going down to our next guy, we're going to have Michael Pittman 15 here. I know everybody and their mom's going to have Michael Pittman higher than this. I know Michael Pittman right now is being drafted as a top 12 wide receiver according to ADP. So people are already all in on Michael Pittman Jr. being a wide receiver 1 in fantasy. Given the overall lack of passing volume I think you'll have in Indianapolis with this team wanting to run the ball with their strength of Jonathan Taylor over and over and over again, I don't necessarily think that we get that elite level breakout for Michael Pittman. I know we're going to have a lot of people saying, well, Mason, he was the wide receiver 15 last year. Now he gets a quarterback upgrade. I agree. It's a quarterback upgrade from Wentz to Matt Ryan, but with Matt Ryan at this point of his NFL career, I don't think it's a night and day difference. I think it's a slight upgrade. And while if you look at counting stats, because Michael Pittman Jr. played all 17 games last year, maybe he finished around this range. From a points per game perspective, he was the wide receiver 28. He was a high-end wide receiver 3 last season. I do expect that he gets a lot better this year, which is why I'm not ranking him at wide receiver 28, which is why I'm ranking him here at wide receiver 15. Now, our last wide receiver in this tier, someone that we expect to get slightly worse from where he was a year ago, Deontay Johnson. Now, I know we're saying we expect Deontay Johnson to get slightly worse, but at the same time, hell, we're ranking Deontay Johnson way before his ADP here. I mean, you're getting Deontay Johnson as a low-end wide receiver 2 in drafts. We're ranking him as that mid-wide receiver 2. He was the wide receiver 7 on a points per game basis last season. Yes, we don't know if the new quarterback here in Pittsburgh, whether that's Trubisky or Kenny Pickett, is going to favor going a little bit deeper downfield with maybe a George Pickens and Chase Claypool versus what Ben Roethlisberger did with the wide receiver operating slightly closer to the line of scrimmage with Deontay Johnson. I agree with that sentiment, which is why we are going to scale down the overall target share for Deontay Johnson compared to what he had a year ago. But I still think he regresses, finishes in this range, and definitely surpasses his ADP. Now, going down to our next tier, we're going to have Mike Williams at 17. Now, with Mike Williams, we've talked about this a lot, but I am slightly concerned that he is going to be involved as that field stretching wide receiver in Los Angeles. I mean, through the first 5 weeks of last year, literally the only receiver to outscore Mike Williams was Cooper Kupp. And that's because Mike Williams wasn't used as a field stretcher. Mike Williams, for the first time in his NFL career, was finally given the role where he could be the alpha X wide receiver in Los Angeles. If that's what we should expect going forward, then trust me, Mike Williams is going to finish a lot higher than this. But we do have a large sample since the year 2017 where Mike Williams has been used as that primary deep threat, clearing out space for targets underneath, like Keenan Allen, as well as in Austin Eckler. What I would say is if you transition over from a PPR format to a non-PPR league, then Mike Williams should slide up these ranks given the touchdown upside he should have with Justin Herbert. But in a full PPR format, I am slightly concerned that he's going to be utilized as the field stretching option here in Los Angeles. Now, our next two wide receivers, Jerry Jeudy, Courtland Sutton. I think that they are back-to-back here. And if they were being drafted back-to-back in fantasy drafts, I would have no issue with it. I mean, if you wanted to rank, Courtland Sutton at 18, Jerry Jeudy at 19, I would keep my lips sealed. I wouldn't say a single word about it. But the issue is, it's unanimous. Everybody thinks Courtland Sutton's the wide receiver 1 here in Denver, despite when both receivers have been on the field at the same time over the past 2 years. Jerry Jeudy has been dominant over Courtland Sutton at almost 4 years younger, where we should assume Jerry Jeudy continues to improve as an overall pass catcher. So based on the splits, I think that Jerry Jeudy has a shot to be the wide receiver 1 here in Denver. I think it's going to be close. That's why we have these guys ranked back to back. But the reason I can't shut up about this, the reason I've been talking a lot about Jerry Jeudy over Courtland Sutton, is the fact that you are getting Jerry Jeudy a full round to 2 later, depending on the draft that you're in. And that's just crazy value. And now our last wide receiver in this tier is going to be Hollywood Brown. Hollywood Brown going to a better situation in Arizona, where, you had DeAndre Hopkins for the last 11 weeks, but at the same time, Hopkins should see a similar target share to what Mark Andrews would have. So he's still playing alongside the alpha, not X wide receiver, but he's still playing alongside the alpha receiving option in his offense. But this time it's going to be in an offense that actually wants to throw the ball, and an offense that's going to push the pace of play, run a crap ton of plays per game with a more efficient passing quarterback overall. So I'm excited about the move from Baltimore over to Arizona. Don't care too much about them playing together at OU with Kyler Murray and Hollywood Brown. And I really don't think that matters as much as people are making it out to be. If you're playing in a league where you know your league mates are very active traders, I would be fine moving Hollywood Brown even higher than this if you think you're going to be able to sell him high after the first month of the season before DeAndre Hopkins comes back. Now let's drop it down to our next tier, where we are going to have Terry McLaurin at 21. With Terry McLaurin, didn't like him last year because I was so much smarter than everybody else. Oh my gosh, guys, I was a genius last year like I am every single season. I was saying, why would you ever draft Terry McLaurin in the 3rd round last year, where he did bust? He was a wide receiver 3 in fantasy on a per game basis. And instead of drafting Terry McLaurin in the third, we were getting Allen Robinson last season because we were that much smarter than. Oh, of course, I'm joking here. But with Terry McLaurin, I'm fine drafting him at his ADP this offseason because, hell, he has significantly better quarterback play with Carson Wentz compared to Taylor Heineke or even Ryan Fitzmagic, who I know was supposed to be the starter last season. I would say there is more target competition in Washington. I think Jahan Dotson's a good wide receiver, and at the same time, maybe Curtis Samuel can stay healthy. Maybe Logan Thomas is healthy this upcoming year as well. So there's added target competition, but the overall quarterback play should be better. So I'm fine drafting Terry McLaurin this season. Our next wide receiver, 22, Chris Godwin, one of my most drafted guys this year. I understand coming back from an injury. Yes, I get it. You should be concerned. But at the end of the day, if Chris Godwin was 100% healthy in a PPR format where touchdown upside doesn't matter as much and we can just chase volume, I'd be taking Chris Godwin, the wide receiver from 2017 instead of 2014. That's been better than Mike Evans on a target share perspective over the past 3 seasons. I'd be taking Chris Godwin over Mike Evans if Chris Godwin was 100% healthy. So I understand that we need to be worried about the overall rehab process with Chris Godwin here and how late he tore his knee up at the end of last season. But I think that we are baking that into his price. I think that if he was fully healthy, trust me, I wouldn't be ranking Chris Godwin at wide receiver 22. He'd be up there probably wide receiver 7. Now, let's go down to our next guy where we're going to have Michael Thomas, 23. Very similar. I understand that a lot of people are going to be worried about injuries with Michael Thomas. And we were way ahead of the market on Michael Thomas about a month and a half ago when you were getting him as the wide receiver 40 on Underdog. Oh, those were the days. Now he has slid up a ton because people are realizing Michael Thomas has an elite level ceiling. It's an extremely wide range of outcomes where you shouldn't be that surprised that Michael Thomas is the wide receiver 5 on a points per game basis this upcoming season. But you also shouldn't be surprised that Michael Thomas is the wide receiver 60 on a points per game basis this year. I think that there is a very wide range of outcomes, a very low floor, a very high ceiling. But to be completely honest, in a casual redraft format with a shallow roster overall, those are the guys we should be targeting. We should be targeting those players that have access to elite level ceilings. Now, our next wide receiver in this tier, we're going to have Allen Robinson at 24. With Allen Robinson, I'm throwing my hands in the air. I don't know what to do here because he was one of the worst wide receivers in the NFL last season. Literally outscored by guys like Braxton Berrios, Khalif Raymond on a per game basis last season. Darnell Mooney dominated him. Darnell Mooney was going into year 2 as a day 3 draft pick of the wide receiver position. That shouldn't happen. But why I am willing to just come out here and say, okay, well, I guess we kind of have to rank Allen Robinson as a top 24 guy. Not even the fact that obviously he's playing with the best quarterback of his entire NFL career, but at the same time that Sean McVay decided, you know what, instead of paying Robert Woods, why don't we ship Robert Woods away for nothing to just get his contract off the books and turn around and pay Allen Robinson more than Woods? And I will admit this to you. I know this is going to come as a major surprise for everybody watching this video. Buckle up, buckle up. It is going to be surprising. Sean McVay knows more about football than I do. I know your world has just collapsed. I know your mind is blown. But Sean McVay probably knows what he's doing. So if he's willing to pay Allen Robinson that to implement him into his offense as the wide receiver 2 here, I'll take Allen Robinson as top 24 guy. Now, our wide receiver 25 dropping down a tier. We are going to have Juju SmithSchuster with Juju. Oh my gosh, guys. I got burned so badly 2 years ago. Like, I came out, called Juju the best buy low target in Dynasty Fantasy Football. It's crashed and burned. I am very reluctant to ever recommend someone to draft Juju SmithSchuster again because, that's just such a traumatizing experience. But at the same time, he should be playing in what I perceive to be a top 5 offense in the NFL, even with the departure of Tyreek Hill. There are no real established wide receivers there in Kansas City. The only guy left over is actually McCole Hardman. We don't know exactly how Sky Moore, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Juju SmithSchuster are going to be utilized. I would imagine Juju plays the slot role. You possibly have Sky Moore as the X wide receiver. You have Marquez Valdez-Scantling as the field stretching option. That's just how it looks on paper. And if something were to occur to 33-year-old Travis Kelce, God knows what the ceiling would be for Juju. Now, our next wide receiver, Gabriel Davis, wide receiver 26. If you're playing in a casual redraft format where Gabriel Davis is going outside the first 5 rounds, go draft Gabriel Davis because he does have an elite level ceiling. Hell, I mean, if he does come out and just have the same target share that Emmanuel Sanders did last year, combined with what he was already working with in Buffalo, and he maintains the efficiency we've seen through the first 2 years of his NFL career, Gabriel Davis will finish significantly higher than this in fantasy football. Now, I am hesitant to assume that Gabriel Davis is going to be able to do two things. A, completely assume the Emmanuel Sanders role on top of what he was already doing. And B, maintain the efficiency he's had off a small sample with much more volume. So there is uncertainty with Gabriel Davis, very similar to what we were looking at with someone like a Michael Thomas a little earlier on. I think there's a very wide range of outcomes where Gabriel Davis could come out here and completely smash in fantasy football, given the situation that he's in. Now, if you're looking at me drafting on a live stream, I'm never taking Gabriel Davis because on Underdog Fantasy, you have to take him at the beginning of the 4th round, which a ton of smart drafters are doing. Of course, I'm not a smart drafter, so I'm not in that crowd. But let me know what you're thinking here. I think in a casual format, he's a fine price, but in those high stakes drafts, I think the hype's gone a little bit too far. Now, DK Metcalf going to be a wide receiver 27 with Metcalf. Easily the most talented wide receiver we've talked about for probably the past 5 minutes here. But also at the same time, he's in the worst situation. A wide receiver with a 26% team target share last year has literally increased his target share on a per game basis every single season of his NFL career. With DK Metcalf, he's going to be playing with the worst offensive line in the NFL, which is going to limit the amount of time that he has to get downfield. And on top of it, he's going to be playing with possibly the worst starting quarterback in the NFL. I don't want to say that with certainty because we don't exactly know what some of these other guys are going to look like, but it's a real possibility that the Seattle Seahawks are just an absolute dumpster fire this year where you don't really want any of these guys. Our next wide receiver, very similar here. Darnell Mooney, 28, will be a dumpster fire in Chicago. Will be about the grossest situation you've ever seen. Justin Fields looked good in the preseason, but it was just the preseason. Horrible offensive line, very bad efficiency from Justin Fields last season. Obviously, Allen Robinson crashed and burned, and I do want to say Allen Robinson's probably a more talented wide receiver in a vacuum. I think Darnell Mooney's a great talent. I think he's in a very bad situation, very similar to DK Metcalf. We're going to have them in this tier. We're going to have Monroe St Brown at 29. With St Brown, I know everybody wants him higher than this, and I understand why, because Monroe St Brown is a superb talent. Now, my issue is, he's playing with Jared Goff in Detroit. And sure, Jared Goff has supported top-end wide receivers before with Sean McVay. I think it's a little bit of a different situation. And what I'll say is there's an outside chance that Amon-Ra St. Brown is like the 3rd or 4th option in this Detroit Lions passing game. I think that this could be a team that is so diversified between DeAndre Swift, who everybody, including myself, we expect to have a massive role in the receiving game this upcoming season. TJ Hawkinson, who could easily take a step forward. I mean, this is a tight end that was drafted in 2019 inside the top 10 picks of the NFL draft. Jameson Williams could come on later in the year, a wide receiver that people thought would have been the wide receiver 1 in this draft class if it wasn't for the torn ACL. Now, I don't agree with that, but people do. So I think that there will be serious target competition in a bad passing offense overall. So despite Amon-Ra St. Brown having the talent profile we look for, I'm going to be a little bit hesitant. If you wanted to rank him at the very top end of this tier, if you want to go throw him at 25, you do you. I completely understand, but that's why we have these tier lists. In the wide receiver 30, Brandon Cooks, the same thing as Darnell Mooney, the same thing as DK Metcalf. He should have an incredibly high target share in Houston, but at the end of the day, we are expecting the Houston Texans to be one of the worst teams in the NFL, if not the worst team. I mean, according to Las Vegas, they're the worst team in the NFL. And I think that we should be concerned about the overall cap that we will see with the passing efficiency. So even if he gets to a 25, 26% team target share, maybe he's a good bet to be the wide receiver 23 on a points per game basis. But I find it almost impossible to believe that he's going to be a top 10 guy. Now let's drop it down a tier. Let's go over to Elijah Moore and Rashod Bateman back to back here. Elijah Moore, we're ranking him like right alongside ADP. I don't really think we have to talk about this. I mean, great talent, bad situation, very similar to a lot of guys in this range. Rashod Bateman is someone that I want to talk about because Rashod Bateman is currently being drafted inside the top 24 wide receivers in high stakes leagues. So obviously, we are well behind the rest of the market with Rashod Bateman. And I will admit, he was a great prospect coming out of Minnesota. I mean, this is a wide receiver that checked every single box. He declared early for the NFL draft. He broke out at 18 years old in college. And he was dominant his final season at Minnesota. Goes in round 1 of the NFL. Checks every single box that you're looking for. But 1.3 yards per route run as a rookie. Historically speaking, not many guys post that kind of season and then come out and have a large breakout this upcoming year. And even if we believe that Rashod Bateman is some elite talent at the wide receiver position, which he could very easily be an above average receiver, he's going to be the second option in a passing offense that may only have 400 passing attempts to go around. We go back to 2020, and the Baltimore Ravens, by far and away, the most run-heavy team in the NFL. Same thing in 2019, not throwing the ball whatsoever. And when they do, 25% of those team targets are going over to Mark Andrews. So we're going to be excited to draft a wide receiver who's coming off a miserable rookie year, even though he did have the groin injury, who at best is going to be the second option in the receiving game in a bottom 5 offense in the NFL in pass attempts. I'm personally not drafting Rashod Bateman as a top 24 receiver. I'll admit he's one hell of a talent, but I don't get the situation. Now, our next guy is going to be Amari Cooper, 33, in the following tier. We dropped Amari Cooper down. I think that we were way too high on Amari Cooper in our last rankings list. I think we had him up there like neck and neck with someone like Brandon Cooks. In reality, Jacoby Brissett going to be possibly the worst starting quarterback if it's not over there in Seattle through the first 11 weeks of this season. Amari is probably someone you want to buy low on if you're playing in an active league by the time we get to week 7, week 8 to prepare for Deshaun Watson coming in week 11 or 12. We're going to have Devonta Smith at 34 with Smith here. Will be a very low volume passing attack in Philadelphia, very similar to what we're expecting in Baltimore. Very similar. You're expecting A.J. Brown to be by far and away the wide receiver 1 here, as you are with Mark Andrews in Baltimore. We're expecting this to be a rush first offense with not a lot of passing volume to go around. I actually think Devonta Smith is significantly more talented than Rashod Bateman. But my issue with this is with Devonta Smith, he's also having to compete with Dallas Goedert. Dallas Goedert is a great talent at the tight end position as well. So I think the targets are going to be very hard to come by in Philadelphia. We're going to have a Drake London 35 with Drake London. I know this is a little aggressive, but I think that despite the bad situation, he checks every single box we look for. Top 10 NFL draft pick, broke out at 18 years old, had a massive role at USC when Michael Pittman Jr. was a senior there. When Monroe St Brown was there as well, a year older than Drake London. And Drake London, he was out there fighting for targets. Like Drake London had a massive role in that USC offense. I think that he could develop to be a much better receiver than Monroe St Brown, than Michael Pittman Jr. at the NFL level. Obviously, as a rookie, though, we can't have that high of expectations when he's playing alongside Kyle Pitts and Marcus Mariota throwing the football. And then our last wide receiver here, we are going to have Adam Thielen. I think if you expect Kevin O'Connell to just jack up the overall passing attempts for this offense, maybe you're even more excited about Adam Thielen than where we have him ranked at 36. But I think that should be it for this video. Thank you so much, of course, for checking it out. If you have any questions, leave them down there in the comments below. I'm answering at minimum the first 200. I'm going to try to answer a lot more than that. I appreciate you, and subscribe to the channel. Go sign up for Underdog Fantasy. Use promo code FLOCK when you sign up for Underdog. You get a 100% deposit match, so it's essentially free for you. You'll get all our rankings. You'll get 300 pages of our analysis and a draft guide that will help you out even if you've already drafted, and you'll be able to draft with us in that 24-hour live stream. But thank you again. I appreciate all of you. I hope you have a great day, and I hope I get this draft with you on the live stream tonight.